This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
President Xi vows to have closer cooperation with Russia. Ethiopia's PM Abiy Ahmed holds talks with TMC leader Al-Burhan over crisis. And UNHCR deeply concerned about civilians trapped in Libya clashes. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Karen Roberts, live in Nairobi. Ramah Nyang now joins me with all your business headlines.
Thank you very much, Karen. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. We'll explore what the authorities in Angola are doing to try and restore economic growth. And the South African rand hits yet another low for the year as wrangles over the business of the central bank do continue within the ranks of the ANC. The details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Karen.
Thank you very much, Ramah. We start in Russia, where the second day of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum was marked by Chinese President Xi Jinping's speech. He focused on sustainable development and globalization, offering a Chinese perspective. It's his third and last day of his trip to Russia. CGTN's Alyosha Meledkovich has more from the northwestern Russian city.
Over 17,000 people came to the 23rd St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And all of them were drawn in and focused on its key event, the plenary session, where some of the world leaders talked about their views about the world's future. In attendance were United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, President of Bulgaria Rumen Radev, Slovakian Prime Minister Peter Pellegrini, Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan, and the two biggest stars of the event, Russian and Chinese Presidents Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. The first speaker was Vladimir Putin, the event's host. In his speech, he focused on the need for more equality in global trade and slammed those who opted for sanctions and trade wars as tools of pressure for imposing their vision onto the world.
It is how the United States, I regret to say that, acts today. It extends their jurisdiction across the whole world. By the way, I already spoke about it 12 years ago. This model not only contradicts the normal logic of communication between the nations in the reality of the complex multipolar world. Most importantly, it does not meet the challenges of the future.
The Russian leader ended his speech with an invitation to all for collaborating on an equal basis. And then it was the time for Chinese President Xi Jinping to take to the stage. He focused on the welfare of the people and the need to eradicate poverty around the world. The Chinese president also discussed China's success in that area, as well as the goals that China had to put in front of itself.
President Putin and I agreed to link up the One Belt, One Road and the Eurasian Economic Union. The initiative of joint implementation of Belt and Road is also consistent with President Putin's idea of the Great Eurasian Partnership. They can definitely supplement each other, complement each other, and I am convinced that this will give a powerful impetus to regional economic integration in the interest of comprehensive sustainable development.
China will work with everybody in the world for the benefit of a bright and prosperous future for all, President Xi Jinping said at the end. His words were greeted by strong applause from attendees. It was questions around energy, globalization and sustainable development that were the focus of this year's plenary session. The speeches given by the presidents of China and Russia emphasized the need for global change in order to achieve those goals. The hand of peace was extended here to leaders at the forum. The question now is whether and who will accept it. Alyosha Meledkovich, CGTN, St. Petersburg.
Well, Russia's been a strong supporter of the Belt and Road Initiative, which has sparked billions of dollars in trade deals and infrastructure projects since it launched 6 years ago.
a key issue for China-Russia cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative. The connection between the BRI and the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union is of great strategic significance. Established in 2015, the EAEU is a group consisting of Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. It seeks to optimize the flow of goods and services among its members, while at the same time achieving mutual benefits with the BRI. In 2015, Russia and China agreed to integrate the BRI with the EAEU construction, and an agreement on trade and economic cooperation was reached last year. On a hardware level, China and the EAEU will enhance interconnection in logistics and transportation, as well as infrastructure projects. Efforts are also being made on software synergy. Trade facilitating mechanisms will be set up in developing areas to create common policies and reduce trade barriers, and also study the long-term objective of establishing a free trade zone. Aside from strategic coordination, there are more pragmatic results between China and Russia under the BRI framework. In 2018, bilateral trade hit a record high, reaching $107 billion, with results already reached in traditional cooperative areas. China and Russia are also seeing an optimized trade structure with new growth in high-tech, finance, e-commerce, and tourism industries. 2019 will also be a fruitful year. 2 new bridges under construction over the Amur River between Russia and China are expected to be completed, and the jointly built Power of Siberia gas pipeline will be put into service at the end of this year. It is expected to provide China with 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually. Jen Kwan, CGTN.
Well, uncertainty over oil prices and American sanctions are among the factors weighing on Russia's economy. Is a warm relationship with China enough to boost growth? CGTN's Xia Cheng discussed it with the CEO of Russia's second largest bank.
We're a big client of Huawei, and we now in the process of digitalization of our bank. So Huawei is our partner. China is our strategic partner, and of course Chinese companies. I have a lot of meetings with Chinese companies responsible for transport, for financial sector, and Huawei is our natural partner in the area of digitalization.
And let's talk about the hype around China-Russia relations right now at this very interesting point, because it's very important for Russia to attract more capital from China. But is it enough to offset the weak Western and domestic investments here?
We are not necessarily thinking that China against the West for our investment. We would like to work with both, but because of the geopolitical situation, I think we are more looking for other sources. Of course, China is a natural partner for us. We are neighbors. You are a big country, and you are investing capital. So I think we have a big. For example, we will soon start some maybe more projects here for infrastructure, including the new airport and the new roads. And we know that Chinese companies have very big interest, not only to construct these, but also to be investors, for example, on the PPP project. So that's one very important area when I think your company can invest.
And Russia's economy is still very dollar dependent. We're talking about trade, even that with China, and also your external transactions. So how prolonged do you think will the impact from U.S. sanctions will be?
I think what's happened in relationship between America and Russia, for example, the sanctions against Russian financial sector, against Russian enterprises, and what's happened in the relationship between you and America, like the arrest of the top Huawei officials and measures taken by American government against Huawei and against your export, show that we should protect our companies from the influence of dollar. Of course, we're not saying that we can do it tomorrow, but definitely we have a trade of $108 billion, and we have a program to increase it. Our leaders said we need to have $200 billion maybe by the year 2024. And of course, within this trade, we can very much enlarge our settlement in the yuan and rubles. The sanctions doesn't apply to payment and settlement. They they apply only to capital, investment and long-term loans. So I think we should work more with Chinese banks, and then if we work more, we'll find a way how to use our currency more.
Eastern Libyan forces have launched airstrikes for a second night on a military base housed within Tripoli's airport. The Libyan National Army of renegade commander Khalifa Haftar, which controls eastern Libya, has tried to seize Tripoli from the internationally recognized government of national accord in a 2-month offensive. Over 500 people have been killed since the offensive began. 100,000 people, including migrants and refugees, are feared trapped by the clashes raging on the outskirts of Tripoli. Well, the UN's Human Rights Office is deeply concerned about the ongoing violence. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more.
Late on Thursday, the Libyan National Army attacked the military section of the Tripoli airport. The group led by Commander Khalifa Haftar has since April been trying to seize the capital. But they have failed to breach defences in the southern suburbs. UN Human Rights is gravely concerned about the civilians trapped in the conflict-affected area.
We're deeply concerned about the ghastly conditions in which migrants and refugees are being held in detention in Libya, with some 22 having died of tuberculosis and other illnesses in the Zintan detention facility since last September. And we're also extremely concerned about ongoing reports of disappearances and human trafficking after people were intercepted at sea by the Libyan Coast Guard and taken back to Libya.
Libya is a departure point for illegal immigrants hoping to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Europe. With the ongoing fighting, some migrants are now stranded in the country.
This is particularly worrying given reports that migrants are being sold for forced labor or to smugglers promising transit to Europe. There are also reports that some women have been sold for sexual exploitation. And we've long documented the kinds of horrific abuses to which migrants and refugees are subjected in Libya.
According to the UN Human Rights Office, so far this year, a total of more than 2,300 people have been picked up off the coast of Libya and put in detention facilities.
We urge the government of national accord to immediately launch an independent investigation to locate these missing people. The Libyan Coast Guard and the DCIM must ensure that they are accountable for every person held in detention and that their human rights are respected. We remind the government that when a person dies in custody, there is a presumption of state responsibility. Libya has a heightened duty of care to protect the lives of individuals deprived of their liberty, including providing them with the necessary medical care.
Migrant shelters in Libya remain crowded with thousands of people. Conditions at these facilities are said to be deplorable. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Well, for more on the story, we are now joined by CGTN's Yasser Hakim, who is in Cairo for us. Yasser, Eastern Libyan forces attacked Tripoli airport for the second night. What's the latest you have there in Libya?
Yes, both sides, Karen, are trying to control the Tripoli airport, international airport. At the moment, the Libyan National Army says it is in control of most of the airport and the area around it and the road that is leading to the airport from the capital Tripoli. But there are ongoing clashes. As we speak, clashes do continue between both sides to try to control this area. There were air raids from the Libyan National Army last night and tonight and today, as well as an attack on a drone plane that the Libyan National Army says was used by the government to try to target the headquarters and some parts or soldiers in the Libyan National Army around the Ma'atiq airport, not just the Tripoli International Airport, but also Ma'atiq Airport. Ma'atiq Airport is currently the one that is working in Libya. The Tripoli International Airport is not working at the moment because there has been clashes in the last year there, and it has affected the operations in the airport. But what is considered the civilian airport is the Ma'atik airport nearby, also around Tripoli. And the Libyan National Army says that the government of National Accord is using that airport for military use, not for civilian use. And that is why it is also trying to target around the airport without, it claims, without targeting any civilian aircraft. So the clashes do continue on the outskirts and the south of Tripoli as the Libyan National Army is trying to enter the city for the past few months and without any success so far. But it says that they are close to entering the city within the next month.
So clashes continuing for a third night around Tripoli. The UN is deeply concerned about the appalling conditions in which migrants and refugees are being held in detention in Libya. What more can you tell us on that?
Yes, we've heard now in the report the atrocities that that the migrants face during when they are sent back to Libya in detention centers, in addition to reports of many of them trying to commit suicide to escape the kind of torture they are living in these detention centers, besides obviously the trafficking, the drug trafficking, the human trafficking, and using them by militias in Libya for helping in moving weapons or fighting in the war. And this all goes back to an agreement that was signed between the EU and Libya, whereby the EU has provided tens of millions of euros to the Libyan Coast Guard to train the Coast Guards and also to provide them with equipment and boats and so forth, so that the Libyan Coast Guard would be able to stop refugees from moving into or traveling into the EU, especially Italy, which is the closest point from the European Union to Libya. And while this has been a success on that front, about 90%, there's a 90% drop in the number of refugees moving into the European Union from Libya in the last year and a half. However, Libyan Coast Guards, they return those migrants back to Libya in detention centers that are not equipped to receive any human beings. And because of the security situation in Libya, the absence of security, the control of militias, they are using these migrants for their own benefits, such as using them for drugs, like I said, for slavery and so forth. So it's not solving the problem for the refugees. It solved the problem for the EU, but the EU is also being accused by the international human rights organizations of not helping furthermore, doing enough to ensure that the refugees are put safely in the detention centers and not in the situation they are facing now. So it's from the EU problem. It is accused. The Libyan government is also accused for not doing enough as well. And this has been going on for a year or so. It's not new, but the UN and the humanitarian organizations are every once in a while trying to create awareness to the international community that something has to be done quickly, because it is not solving the problem of refugees by bringing them back in detention centers in Libya.
Okay, thank you very much for that update. That was CGTN's Yasser Hakim in Cairo, following the situation in Libya with the clashes and the impact that's having on refugees in detention centres there. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away, lots more to come, including CAR President launches public consultation for Reconciliation Commission. And Cairo to be slum-free by the end of 2019.
So your parking is higher?
Yeah.
就上学。
就是面对异国婚姻还是挺难的。到时间我就得离开，然后舍弃这里所有的东西。我很想看看这个世界，很想了解不同的地方的文化。不管你在哪里，你都可以创作，你都可以思考，你都可以感受到音乐。我会非常想念他们，而不只是这个风景优美的小岛。
因为中国是我们家，然后肯尼亚太美了。
哦，对。
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To the Central African Republic, where a ceremony has been held at the presidency in the capital Bangui to mark the establishment of a reconciliation commission. To begin the lengthy process, President Faustin-Archange Touadéra launched public consultations which will take into account the needs and the expectations of ordinary citizens. CGTN's Amy McConaughey now reports.
The President of Central African Republic, Faustin-Archange Touadéra, has launched a series of public consultations. These consultations will serve as a basis for the preparation of a draft bill. The bill will establish a Truth, Justice, Reparation and Reconciliation Commission.
The Special Criminal Court for the Central African Republic that was created has become operational. It is now a question of getting involved in the establishment of the Truth, Justice, Reparation, and Reconciliation Commission. That is why it seemed to me essential to instruct the government to give a popular legitimacy to this transitional justice system, to be put in place by first consulting at the base of Central Africans and Central African Republic to enable them to express their expectations and wishes clearly.
The Central African Republic descended armed armed conflict in 2012. A peace accord was signed earlier this year, but its impact on the ground will take time. A UN stabilization mission, MINUSCA, first deployed in 2014, is still active today. Peacebuilding is complicated, as deep-seated tensions do not disappear overnight. The Reconciliation Commission encourages pardons in a country where ordinary citizens have borne the brunt of the conflict.
We will all need to remain vigilant in the fight against impunity, to give full effect to the rights of the victims, the truth, the justice, and the reparations. There is a need for a system to protect victims throughout the territory, for their effective participation in all stages of the search for truth.
Creating the Reconciliation Commission was a stipulation in a peace deal between the state and 14 armed groups. Signed earlier this year in February, the peace agreement is the 8th attempt at reconciliation. Amy McConaughey, CGTN.
The factional leader of Boko Haram, Abubakar Shekau, has emerged in a new video denouncing the country's national pledge and democratic rule. Shekau is seen flaunting a rifle and made a 35-minute speech in Arabic. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
The latest video released by the Boko Haram leader is the first in nearly 1 year. The authenticity of the video is yet to be verified, but Abubakar Shekau is seen restating the group's ideology on Western education and democracy. Shekau specifically referred to the country's national pledge as shirk, translated to mean sin of idolatry. The military has constantly said Boko Haram is defeated and is only seeking recognition and support from foreign jihadist groups. The Shekau-led faction of Boko Haram was whittled down by the emergence of another faction, ISIL in West Africa. They're responsible for the killings of tens of thousands and displacement of millions in Nigeria's northeastern region. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Algeria has become just the second African country to be declared malaria-free, more than 40 years after Mauritius attained the same status. Much like the rest of the world, the continent has been grappling with the vector-borne disease, which is spread by mosquitoes. CGTN's Julie Shear caught up with experts at a recent health conference held in Johannesburg and filed this report.
Africa is not alone in the fight against malaria, but a handful of countries have managed to beat the world's deadliest disease. Algeria is the second African country to do so. Its last reported case was in 2013.
What is critical with what Algeria did was investment in infrastructure, in the healthcare resource for health providers, making sure that they're well trained and capacitated, engagement of their communities, making sure communities understood what the government was trying to do, and ensuring that they use the best medications to fight malaria.
Sadly, the picture is not the same for the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. It accounts for 90% of the 500,000 deaths worldwide, affecting mostly children under 5.
Mosquitoes which spread malaria build resistance very rapidly to drugs and insecticides used to get rid of them, making it difficult for most African countries to deal with the disease and to eradicate it completely.
It could also be due to drug resistance, especially in Asia. We've noticed that our drugs, artemisinin combination therapy, is starting to show signs of not working against the parasite anymore. So we don't have new drugs right now to fight the disease. We are busy developing new drugs.
But there may be hope. The world's first malaria vaccine is being tested in Malawi.
They did clinical trials already on that vaccine, and they had a success rate of about 30% in severe malaria cases and 40% in non-severe malaria cases. So we know that it does work, but it isn't working at full 100%. And another thing to remember, a vaccine on its own is not going to make a difference.
Higher rainfall patterns and recent flooding caused by climate change in southern Africa is also playing a role in undoing the hard work made to control malaria, contributing to a rise in the number of cases since 2015. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Officials in Uganda have made it an offence to offer handouts to children living on the streets. While it may seem like a harsh move, the measure is designed to protect these children from exploitation, with city authorities saying traffickers are benefiting from money collected by street children. CGTN's Isabel Nakiriat now reports.
A token of compassion from strangers can often result in exploitation. Kampala city authorities say traffickers are using street children to make money, and that's why new regulations are needed.
The law that we have put in place is to protect our children. We would want to make this unprofitable, because as long as the traffickers are benefiting by putting these kids on the street to beg on their behalf, then that means the trade is profitable, it's lucrative, and that will encourage more children to be trafficked from upcountry into the city streets.
The new law makes it illegal to offer any kind of handout to street children. Offenders will be fined around $10 or face a 6-month jail term. It also forbids children from begging or selling items on the streets. Meanwhile, the government says it's cracking down on traffickers who bring children from villages and force them to beg on the streets.
The public should be vigilant in identifying and reporting the perpetrators of child trafficking and ensure that they are brought to book. Here we have locked up several individuals. I think the number is now 13 as of today in Moroto prison.
More than 15,000 children are said to roam the country's streets, and government officials say these numbers are growing. And city authorities are concerned the children are also getting involved in other crimes.
They have scratched people's vehicles. They become violent, especially at night, and some graduate into criminals. So this problem of street children has to be addressed if we are to have a safe and secure city.
The government has now set aside around $900,000 to resettle, rehabilitate and train street children in various social disciplines like football, as well as enrolling them in schools set up within the rehabilitation centers. Ugandan police say the new regulations will take place with immediate effect and that police will maintain permanent presence on the streets to ensure children are not begging. And while the measure may seem heavy-handed to some, the government believes it will protect children from being exploited. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
Now to our continuing coverage on the unfolding situation in Sudan. The United Nations Human Rights Agency is now calling for thorough investigations into possible human rights violations during the Monday crackdown on protesters in Khartoum. Here's Amy McConaughey with the latest.
The violent breakup of a protest camp outside Sudan's military headquarters continues to elicit reactions from regional and international communities. The Declaration of Freedom and Change Forces, linked to the opposition, says over 100 people died in the incident. However, the Transitional Military Council insists that the number of people who died is 61. Now, the United Nations Human Rights Agency is expressing its concern.
We continue, obviously, to be very gravely concerned about the situation in Sudan, and we have proposed to the government that there be a rapid deployment of a UN human rights monitoring team to examine allegations of human rights violated committed since the 3rd of June. We're seeking the cooperation of the government to be able to deploy this mission, which would seek to engage with the relevant Sudanese authorities, civil society organisation and others, and we'd like it obviously to get on the ground at the earliest possible opportunity.
The agency is also calling upon the Military Council to carry out independent and unbiased investigations into what led to the violent crackdown and the number of dead and injured.
Once again, we call on the authorities to ensure a prompt independent investigation into the use of excessive force against protest camps, including the alleged involvement of the Rapid Support Forces, which includes among its troops members of the former Janjaweed militia that are linked to systematic human rights abuses in the Darfur region between 2003 and 2008 in particular. Obviously, accountability is crucial to avoid further bloodshed.
Opposition leaders have blamed the violence on the Rapid Response Forces. They also say hospitals and local medical staff attending to the injured are being targeted. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is in Khartoum to try and mediate an amicable end to the current political standoff, which has taken a bloody turn. Amy McConaughey, CGTN.
Well, as indicated in that report, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has held talks with the leader of the Transitional Military Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. The meeting took place in Khartoum shortly after Abiy Ahmed's arrival with his delegation. Details of the meeting were not immediately released to the media. He's set to meet with opposition leaders later. The move comes a day after the African Union suspended Sudan over the violent crackdown on Monday. Well, the African Union said Sudan will be readmitted after a civilian government has been installed in the North African nation. The Egyptian capital, Cairo, will be free from slums by the end of this year. That's according to City Governor Khalid Abdel Al. He says the government has devised a plan to improve unsafe informal settlements. In line with Cairo's urban facelift, the project aims to relocate people to new purpose-built social housing units. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more.
There are about 109 slums in Cairo. They house more than 10 million people. It's been accumulating for decades. An aggressive plan that started 5 years ago to develop the stricken areas is in its final year.
Slums are divided into dangerous areas for living and unsafe areas that need renovation. For the second type, we're developing these slums with proper infrastructure and services, as well as renovating the houses. The dangerous areas are in inhumane conditions, which means we have to move people out of the slums and into new cities. Those will be completely finished by the end of the year.
A successful model is Asmarat City, a number of housing complexes built specially for the people who were moved out of Cairo slums.
We have built 40,000 housing units so far. They're fully furnished, and each complex has security, school, a club, and department stores. The budget we spent so far is 12 billion Egyptian pounds, and you're building more units for others who will move in.
The government is also providing vocational training for the people in the area to create job opportunities for the economically stricken families.
I
wish all the areas will be beautiful and developed. I'm happy with the new projects to support and host the people who live in slums, and I hope they free the city completely from the slums.
It's an excellent decision. We've seen horrible things in slums like drugs and crime. Egypt deserves better, and these slums must disappear completely.
Eradicating slums in Cairo is not just about improving the lives of a few who live there, but it also has a positive social and economic impact on the whole community. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's now go over to Ramah. He has all the latest business news for us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Here's what's coming up in business. We'll explore what the authorities in Angola are doing to try and restore economic growth. And the rand has hit yet another new low for the year as wrangles over the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank continue.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's head over to Angola, Africa's second largest oil producer. It's had a pretty tough time ever since the price of crude oil collapsed rather dramatically back in 2014. The country has been in recession ever since 2016, and the size of the economy has shrunk significantly. Inflation at the same time has also spiked. The government and the central bank have since had to step in with a range of fiscal and monetary policy measures. Here's Angela Coppola now reporting on what they are doing from Luanda.
The country's central bank governor spoke to delegates at the oil and gas conference, reminding them that until that collapse, the oil and gas sector had contributed some 40% of the country's GDP and 98% of the country's export revenue. It's clawed back some of those losses. The inflation rate has also recovered somewhat.
Last year we had an inflation of around 18.6%. This year we plan to reduce. We have had inflation at that rate for the last 3 years. It is in decline now.
The country's financial system was also severely stress-tested by the oil price collapse. Angolan financial authorities have worked with the IMF to find sustainable solutions.
We have to reinforce the resilience of our financial system in the context of a program with the IMF. We are undertaking an assessment of the quality of commercial banks' assets. We do not expect many or huge surprises, but there are many cases where we need to reinforce their capital structures.
The country's public debt has leapt from 30% in 2013 to 80% in 2018 due to the oil price collapse and a reduction in revenue. The government tightened its belt and cut costs, and then the debt figures began dropping.
You would have said that this derives from the increase in the price of oil. Of course, it has helped. We could have increased expenditure, but we didn't, because we needed to change the way the public debt moves. That surplus has helped the government to reduce the stock of domestic debt.
The government has also introduced a number of reforms.
The government has approved the antitrust law, and we believe that such a law will help improve the functioning of markets and increase the competitiveness of the national economy.
The country's financial authorities are committed to reducing its debt burden and diversifying the economy. Policies are now in place, and it's a question of discipline and staying focused on the end goal,
which is sustainable, diversified economic growth. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Luanda, Angola.
On to South Africa now. Its currency, the rand, fell to yet another new low for 2019 early on Friday as wrangles about the role, the mandate of the central bank remain essentially unresolved within the ranks of the ruling African National Congress Party. Now, the currency was down by over 0.6%, about 15.09 to the dollar. It brings losses since Monday to 5%. Assurances by the ANC late on Thursday that the central bank remains essentially independent did little, if at all, to ease investors' nerves. Now, the row has exposed divisions within the ANC. One group, loyal to the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is opposed to calls from a rival faction that the bank should be doing a lot more to boost employment and kickstart growth in the country's ailing economy. Now, with over 22 countries having ratified it, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is now effectively in force. The deal has the potential to make Africa home to the largest single free trade area on the planet. South Africa is one of 52 AU member states that did sign up, but among those that stayed out, one of the biggest standouts was Nigeria. With a perspective from South Africa, here's CGTN's Sumitra Naidu.
The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, or ACFTA, will see the establishment of a single market of goods and services for more than 1 billion people across the continent, with an estimated GDP of $2 trillion.
Companies that are based within South Africa are actually urged now to expand their horizons and do business with other companies throughout the continent in other regions such as Western Africa and also Central Africa, as these regions historically were dearth in terms of trade agreements.
In 2014, continental trade among African countries stood at just over 16%. The UN Economic Commission for Africa predicts the trade agreement could raise that to 25% by 2040.
The benefits, of course, is that it's the start of the economic integration process for the African continent. So for African members, it means that there would be less barriers to trade among each other.
The agreement may be in place, but it will still be a while before goods and services cross borders free of tariffs. Negotiations over African import duties are still underway.
What makes the AFCFTA a little bit different to other regional economic community trade agreements is that they have a dispute settlement mechanism and a dispute settlement body. So there used to be one in SADC, the SADC tribunal, but this was dissolved a couple of years ago. So hopefully the strong institutions would mean that there is better state-to-state dispute resolutions.
There will be some challenges during implementation, but it's still a historic moment for Africa as countries commit to wider economic integration. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, the Women's Deliver Conference taking place in Canada has come to a close. Kenya's head of state, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, was part of those attending the event. While there, he pledged to make gender equality a reality in the East African economy by 2030. Even though it is enshrined in the country's constitution, gender equality is still a dream for many Kenyan women. As CGTN's Robert Nagila explains, women are disadvantaged even when it comes to getting access to finance.
Mercy Murundi has been selling second-hand clothes at her stall in Nairobi's Woodley area for the last 6 years. With little hope of qualifying for a bank loan, she depends on digital credit when she needs to restock.
I go for M-Shwari or KCB M-Pesa.
Why those particular ones?
Because they are easy to access.
Digital loans are easy to obtain, short-term but carry a high interest rate. All one needs is a smartphone, download the app, and you're in business.
They give you a duration of a month. Failure to pay, you are being charged 10 bob each day as an interest.
For Mercy and thousands of other female-owned small-scale businesses, digital loans are the only option available to them. Majority have no security to offer banks for a loan. A law passed in 2013, the Matrimonial Property Act, gives women the same rights as men to land ownership and inheritance. In theory at least, but a different matter in practice when traditional customs are involved. A few stalls away, Mercy Muthoni says mobile credit lenders have provided much-needed access to funds for businesswomen.
If they could reduce the interest rates, it would help us small businesses.
But Kenya's central bank is urging caution. more than 6 million Kenyans are digital borrowers. A study conducted in 2016 found more than 400,000 people blacklisted by credit reference bureaus for defaulting on loans as low as $20.
These online lenders, we have not licensed them. So there's a bit of a, caveat emptor, right? Which is really dangerous. We need to deal with them because in effect they are Shylocks.
Kenya's president has pledged to make gender equality a reality in the sub-Saharan nation. Only then can women effectively compete with their male peers. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
And the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, says that failure is a key ingredient for success. You really can't have one without the other. While addressing a conference in Las Vegas, the world's richest man said that business is in many ways a continuous experiment and it won't always work.
If you want to be an entrepreneur, the most important thing is to be customer obsessed. So don't satisfy your customers. Figure out how to absolutely delight them. That is the number one thing, whoever your customers are. Passion, you have got to have some passion for the arena that you're going to develop and work in. Because otherwise you're going to be competing against people who do have passion for that, and they're going to build better products and services. You can't be a mercenary, you have to be a missionary. Missionaries build better products and services, they always win. The mercenaries are just trying to make money, and paradoxically, the missionaries always end up making more money. You have to pick something that you actually have a genuine passion for. You have to take risk. You have to be willing to take risk. If you aren't going to take risk, if you come up with a business idea, there's no risk there, you're probably, it's probably already being done. Those ideas are already being done. They're being done well by many, many people. So you've got to have something that might not work. And so you have to accept that your business is going to be, in many ways, an experiment, and it might fail. And that's okay. That's what risk is. The good news is, in Amazon, we still take risks all the time, and we encourage it, and we talk about failure. We should be failing. Our failures have to grow with the company. We need big failures if we're going to be moving the needle. We need to have, billion-dollar scale failures. And if we're not swinging hard enough.
I'll leave it there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be going over to Uganda, looking at that country's State of the Nation address and how President Yoweri Museveni's government plans to address rising economic problems over there. Growth is slowing down, and there are quite a few trade issues on the horizon as well. Some answers coming your way at 1800 GMT to all those knotty problems. See you then. For now, though, back to Karen.
Thank you very much, Ramah. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including special exhibition in Nigeria gives women artists a platform to showcase their talent.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Women artists from Nigeria, South Africa and Hungary are exhibiting their work at the Sister Art Exhibition in Lagos. The showcase is designed to promote women artists on the continent, to help them network and to learn from each other. CGTN's Deji Badmus has that report.
It's the first of its kind. 35 exhibitors from Nigeria, Hungary and South Africa, all women, are the brains behind their pieces, ranging from textile works to jewelry and all kinds of artworks and crafts. Paintings which capture diverse emotions and social settings are also on display. One good example is this unique art piece, which the artist says depicts human passion.
My artwork is made out of paper. I work with waste mostly, things that are household friendly, and most of my installations are indoors. And this particular artwork at my back is titled Energy Burst 1. It's about the human energy that we have inside when we want to do something.
Other exhibitors also explained the untold stories behind their paintings and the techniques which set their works apart.
Artwork here is titled Outburst, and it's actually like capturing an emotion of excitement and joy at being able to achieve one's goal. I did it with acrylic paints, and I used a unique technique which I refer to as scribble painting. So I don't paint using a brush. I use a tube rather to apply my paint. So that's one of the things that makes it quite unique.
An economic counselor by profession and a hobby artist at the same time, Hungarian Theresia's textile works are inspired by her love for the African fabric. She sees this platform as a good opportunity to record more successes.
I hope this kind of initiative, this Sister Art, is an international initiative for women artists. It could be a very good platform to improve the knowledge and the opportunities also for Nigerian women artists.
Interestingly, the brain behind the idea is a man, Ini Dan, who says the exhibition is designed to drum up support and provide a platform for female contemporaries in the creative industry.
We've decided to bring them together to be able to let the world know that these women can do a whole lot. So it's just giving an opportunity for women to be able to showcase their sense of creativity. We intend reaching out to as many countries as possible.
It's a great initiative. We have a lot of up-and-coming artists here and some inexperienced or less experienced ones. And this is a platform where they've all been able to come together to learn from one another and to project their talents. So I think it's very wonderful, and even more wonderful that it's a man who came up with the initiative to celebrate us women.
It's indeed a great idea and a beautiful platform for especially African female artists. The organizers plan to make it bigger next year by attracting more female artists from across the continent. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
We've got all the sports news coming up for you after the break, including all set for the opening matches of the FIFA